Hi guys, this is Srinivas Gatani. Today is 28th of March 2026. The war started on 28th of February 2026. It has been exactly 30 days, and let's have a look where the war is at. US and Israel collectively started bombarding Iran on the various facilities they have for missiles, the missile carriers, the air force, the navy, their personnel, and then they on the very first day, on the very first few strikes, they took out their supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. So, for the first 1 or 2 weeks, it looked like the Iranian regime was decimated and is about to go under. But now, at the end of 4 weeks, we see the Iranian regime, the IRGC regime, actually, is still resiliently surviving, and then they still have a decent amount of munitions. In some reports, probably 1,000 missiles and few thousand drones, which nobody knows about where they are. While Israel and the US are mainly Israel is bombarding to take out all these manufacturing facilities which Israel have for the weapons. Still, nobody really knows that what seems to be the strength of the Israeli resilience. They have shown maturity to reach out to so many countries on a bilateral fashion. They have tried to reach out to the United Nations, and they call the war unlawful, which it seems it is, because the war was not under a congressional approval in the US, but on the pretext of destroying nuclear weapons, possible nuclear weapons, and enriched materials which were lying in Iran, which is a plausible reason to go and do that, because America has allies like Israel and the Gulf nations who have been talking about this nuclear threat from Iran, which which has got a theocratic setup. So Iran sits on a energy supply of oil and gas, and it exports and makes its primary income from selling oil and gas energy. It doesn't really need nuclear energy to sustain itself. So the nuclear material, the nuclear ambition in the program was supposedly to make a nuclear bomb, and then Iran has got a lot of other military ambitions in the Middle East, which made it a prime suspect. So the war has been on for 4 weeks. By every passing day, Iran's resilience is shocking everyone across the globe. People were expecting the regime to turn over and die, but it hasn't been able to do that. It has maturely stood ground militarily, politically. It might be cornered because nobody on the globe really wants to see Iran standing, but it does survive, and it is able to face politically almost everybody either on a bilateral basis or on other bases. There are few anomalies from the Allied forces end, which are not really making sense. The very first is that by each passing day, the more the Americans and the Israelis bombard Iran, Iran seems to be getting stronger and has its voice being known. Second one is that on the very first day, there was an attack by using a Tomahawk missile onto a naval girls' school, which killed about 175 people, out of which there were 100 girls and staff who were in the school. So, the American forces had bombed that facility twice within a span of 40 minutes with using Tomahawk missiles. And then there was a press release from their end that they had this as a target for a while, and but the intelligence on this target was old. They thought that this was some kind of a naval base, and which was housing naval people, and probably their weapons. So they took it out. So okay, we can understand that probably that could have been a mistake of intelligence being provided, which was wrong. But then the Americans went on to bomb 65 schools by a report from Iranian Red Cross Crescent Society. And yesterday, the foreign minister of Iran, Mr. Abbas Araghchi, came out and with a monologue, and he said the 600 schools have been demolished using missiles and drones as yet, and which has killed about 1000 students. So if you make a mistake once, it can be a mistake. If you made the mistake 65 times, we don't know whether it's a mistake. If you make the mistake 600 times, so say suppose this number is exaggerated, even if you do it 65 times, there is a design to it, and this is an anomaly. Okay, then have a look at this chart. This is a USD to Iranian Rial chart, and you can see that since 10 years ago, the Iranian Rial was $1, $1 American would give you about 38,000 Iranian Rial, and suddenly now in March 2026, you get about 1.3 million Iranian Rial for a dollar. This crash started in January, and this coincided with unrest, a huge mass protest which Iran faced since mid-December onwards. And it was pan Iran, actually. It was almost in all the cities at the same time. And the IRGC regime, the military basically, as well as the police, the Basij, were able to quell the resistance, and in the process they killed about 38,000 to 40,000 odd people, but they were able to quell it. So the reason for the unrest was loss of livelihood and loss of savings. Basically, you see that in the last 10 years, this figure from 38,000 to 1.3 million has actually eroded. Eroded wealth of anyone in Iran who has his wealth in Iranian Real bank accounts or cash. So these people have lost purchasing power to import anything, even from their Middle Eastern neighboring countries, or if they want to get out of Iran, probably most of them will not be able to do it. They are locked inside. So it is a pressure cooker situation where people are feeling imprisoned inside their own country. And this probably might have resulted into the mass protest which happened then. So this pressure cooker situation further worsened by the war which Iran faced from outside. So they already had pressure from within, and now they face a huge amount of war from outside. And very interestingly, Iran still stands. So that's another anomaly. So the school story, this story, and then on top of it, there's another story called the Bushehr nuclear plant. So there is a news from 10 days ago where there have been strikes reported near the Iran's Bushehr plant. The Americans and the Israelis have been bombarding a lot of places with a lot of targets, which, according to the intelligence they have. And one of the intelligence targets was near this particular nuclear power plant in Bushehr. So what's so special about it? Bushehr's plant actually sits here. Okay, this is the Persian Gulf. This is the Straits of Hormuz. This is Qatar. This is Bahrain. This is Dubai, and this is Kuwait. And if this plant is taken out, what could happen? Take a listen to this ambassador from Iran onto the IAEA. He's Iranian's ambassador to IAEA. Hear him out.
The threat targeting the power plant, of course, will have great consequences, because the electricity used by the millions, not only in Iran, because we have the indeed connection with the neighboring countries. So millions of civilians will be affected if anything happens to the decrease of the production of the electricity. Even the US officials, including their ambassadors to the United Nations, included in the target the nuclear power plant. We have a huge nuclear power plant in Bushehr. If been attacked, then the consequences would be much grave, and it is a very serious crime, because the possibility of indeed release of the radioactive material beyond the border of Iran. You know, the Bushehr power plant is located in the coastal area of the Persian Gulf. And all the water in Persian Gulf, in Oman Sea, and elsewhere nearby will be polluted. and the water is being used by our brothers in the southern part of the Persian Gulf for drinking water. And the radiation will be disseminated to those areas, and the people should evacuate the area. So the consequences of possibility of attacking a nuclear power plant, which indeed indicated by the U.S. ambassador to UN, is very grave mistake, and it is against the international law. It is against the international humanitarian law. So in short, what I can say that the threat made by the U.S. Seems that either they don't know the consequences, or they want to create such a situation which will affect everybody in the region, in the Persian Gulf region, and even beyond.
Okay, so this is quite true. Okay, I have never sided with the Iranians as yet, and but whatever this gentleman said is very true, because we saw that there has been strikes near the nuclear sites already, and this is a very trusted newspaper, uh, and he's an ambassador, and he quotes two important things. First, that in case of a strike, direct strike, and a radiation leak to the Bushehr nuclear power plant, everybody in the region will have to be evacuated. Okay, we know from the Chernobyl disaster, we know from the Fukushima disaster, that once radiation leaks, the place is gone for about 3 decades, at least 2 to 3 decades. So if the Persian Gulf area is inhabitable for 2 to 3 decades, the oil wells are gone, the gas belts are gone, so the 20% energy source of the world is gone, which feeds into 30% people in Asia, 30% people of the planet in Asia as well as in Europe. So that's a massive, massive calamity, should I say, if this happens. So this is another anomaly, and it seems it has got a design to it, because he mentioned, the second point he mentioned was that the U.S. ambassador to the UN knows this, and he have mentioned that this is one of the targets in the U.S. target list. So if they know it, they what is the reason to do this? If they understand what they're doing, this is a major problem actually. If they're doing it knowingly, why are they undertaking this humanitarian what do you call it, crime? Being a superpower doesn't allow you to undertake humanitarian crimes, that to this order, which will take out the entire region, will create a huge evacuation for the entire area, and indirectly will cut off 30% of the world's population from energy. They will face energy crisis as well as a famine within the next 6 months. So that's a huge problem. It doesn't adds up. And the last anomaly is this, that all this while there have been a narrative building that whenever US would like to pull out, Israel will undertake a strike which will let make the US stay into the region. So there have been few instances here and there, and now this rumors are being validated because Vice President J.D. Vance, in a tense call with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as he rips Israel's PM for selling easy Iran war to Trump. So this is brewing up since yesterday, and this clearly tells us that the U.S. wants to pull out and go home, because they are facing their internal political struggles within the nation, where people do not want to have boots on ground in Iran. They don't see the U.S.-Iran war in the national interest of U.S. So let's have a look. Who doesn't want this war? U.S. clearly doesn't want this war because it is no more in their national interest. It did it for its allies, and it did it because Iran had a nuclear power plant. Before the war, the Straits of Hormuz were open. 20% of the world's energy was flowing. 30% of the global population, which was dependent on this 20% of energy, was still thriving and surviving. Now this is gone. The Straits of Hormuz is being dictated or hijacked by the Iranian regime, and nobody could do anything about it. This is an important point to note, that Israel doesn't really care about what happens in Strait of Hormuz, because it doesn't get its energy from the Persian Gulf. It has other sources, and the U.S. is also energy self-sufficient. U.S. doesn't need any energy from the Middle East or from anywhere, because it is already self-sufficient. It is a net exporter of energy, and then it has Canada as its northern neighbor, who can supply immense amount of energy in case of adversities. So, the two nations which are waging war onto the Middle Eastern region are either energy self-sufficient or do not want energy from the region. It is a very important point to note. And so, US doesn't want this war. Iran is facing the war at its home, and nobody wants to have war in its home or backyard. So they don't want this war anyways. The Gulf nation do not want this war because they are just facing this war because they had U.S. bases to protect them as well as Israel in times of calamity, which has happened. And interestingly, the U.S. bases and the American Armada was not able to save the Middle Eastern nations from severe damages, and which are resulted in a lot of financial distress across the Gulf nations. So they don't want the war. The third node, the US doesn't want it, the Iranians don't want it, the Gulf nations don't want it. Israel, the prime minister has been pushing, and they have been relentlessly getting behind Iran because it is by design their arch enemy for multiple decades. But there has been this war doesn't seems to be going the way Israel wanted, because they have faced a huge amount of missile attacks back onto inside Israel, which have been affected by Iran. Iran has also landed missiles near the Israeli nuclear power plant facilities, as a message that we can strike deep and then create a radiation leak. The Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu seems to be having a lot of resistance from within his country, which is a democratic country, and people within Israel definitely are not appreciative of the war. There will be, although nobody really understands how Israeli politics happens, but from a military standpoint of view, if this wars gets prolonged, uh, and there is a miscalculation on what kind of inventory of munitions does Iran have, uh, there there can be an existential threat to Israel, which they might not be anticipating. So I would not really count Israel wanting to have this war continued. So only way to stop this war is to somebody to call this war out. The Europeans have not been stepping in for I don't know what reason. They have been a lot of voices to do this. Saudi and UAE have been voicing America to go take out Iran once and for all, and then continue the prolonged military exercise which America is undertaking. But America is reluctant itself to undertake it and then go back home. I'll tell you why America is reluctant. First, it doesn't want to have boots on ground because it's facing a lot of trouble back home. Second is this: if it goes ahead and hits the Bushehr nuclear power plant, which is by design actually, which is a target inside the it's marked as a target in the US target list, which has been announced by the US ambassador to the UN, which was mentioned by this gentleman, the Iranian ambassador to IAEA, that this is systematic. This is not sporadic. This is systematic. And on top of it, President Trump have been talking about taking out the power facilities since the last 10 days. And then he took a moratorium for 48 hours. Then he took a further moratorium for another 5 days, and it has got stretched to another 10 days as of now. So I am guessing that this particular strike, which is marked as a target in the American target list, if this happens and there is a total collateral damage to the region, it is not only the people in the region who will have to be evacuated and who lose it all. It will be 30% of the world population, in addition to the people of Middle East, who will face the consequences, and then there will be many other indirect consequences dependent on the economies of these 30% population of the globe. So it could be, we can witness this can turn into a catastrophe bigger than what we have witnessed or our forefathers have witnessed in the World War II era. Nobody wants that. So the only way to get out of this situation is to arrange a peace meet between the all four nodes, that is US, Iran, Israel, and the Middle Eastern Gulf people, the Gulf nations, who can actually come together with the US as well. And they just discussed two things. First is how to open the Strait of Hormuz, okay, because if business commences, everybody gets to make money, and when everybody gets to make money, all the damages which have been done on the war gets to heal themselves. So that's very important. The second point is to end the war and get into a treaty for the next decade where nobody will lob a single missile or a single drone attack or any other kind of attack onto the other people, because it is not just about the energy which comes out of the region. If this region gets destabilized, a destabilized region will always destabilize adjacent regions. And in a hyper interconnected world, the speed at which this war has escalated, um, if we see this war escalating all the way to end of April, um, this will result in a global catastrophe of unforeseen proportions. So I, Srinivas Gattani, in my personal capacity, offer a mediation to all these nodes, to the US, to Iran, to Israel, and to the the Gulf nations, that if it can be done on X.com, let's do this and focus only on these 2 points which we talked about. Opening the Strait of Hormuz, for point number one. Point number two is to end the war with a 10-year treaty that nobody will attack nobody else. And how do we do this? If this can be done on an online meeting, it will be something which I can feasibly do. Or if it has to be done in the regal old ways where people meet onto a table physically, do let me know. If somebody can sponsor me to come about, I'll be more than happy to do it, undertake it. Please stop the war. You guys have the power. Let's all collectively stop it. We see the catastrophe in the making. Let's not face this. Thank you.